Hello. Okay, so I'm gonna give this a go. I have to tell you right off the bat, it's probably been over a decade since I touched charcoal, but I'm gonna give it a try. I'm not sure what I'll be able to achieve here. That's the other trick. I'm going for, I think what I'm gonna try to do tonight, pretty sure it's both easy and difficult. Is this there used to be a style of it's hard to explain. I'm usually pretty good at acquiring a new arty kind of trick, but this one was a little different, and I can't say I've ever been particularly great at it, which is part of the reason I'm so fascinated by it. I'll get more into that in a bit as I make it, but Sumi-e, I believe I'm probably saying that wrong. Sumi-e ink paintings were something that caught my attention. And when I had the opportunity to try to learn to do it, I took it. And I'll tell the story of that as I work on this. But I ended up for a little while wondering whether or not I could do it with graphite pencil and smudging. And I did very early on work on a web comic that I used this style in. So I'd make these landscapes with these small figures in them, um, and use my old typewriter to type the dialogue. And that was a fun experiment with the style. And so I'm kind of going back towards trying it out again here, in that, like, I like the ability to lay down a line and smudge it. And so I will probably rough out what I'm going to think here very lightly with the pencil. And then I will go at it with the charcoal and see what I can do. Now, this is a very simple, it's misleading, but a very simple style. So if this runs short lengthwise, I might flip it and do another one after it, but we'll see how this one goes. I might be getting ahead of myself. All right, so placement on the page. We kind of want to do, I feel like I want to do I hesitate to say it out loud because the trick to this particular style that I've played with before is you make something and then you tell people what it is you made. Because, like, this more than any style of work I've ever done is it's very distinctly a style that, like, there's no going back. When you've put down your line is there. And so, in a certain way, you have to, it's almost like working with a partner. The random odd quirks that might happen in a stroke, or the way the pigment or ink or charcoal goes down on the page, can just sometimes just not quite do what you were aiming for. And you kind of have to treat it like, okay, so I'll take this as input into maybe changing the design a little bit. And so you have to be flexible with it, but you also have to commit and intend to make it a certain way from there's not a lot of fudging room after it's been done. And so it's this nice compromise between, like, be flexible, but also commit and, have confidence enough to be able to go full on with whatever you're doing. You don't get to be tentative with it. So Um, I'm a little hesitant to start and say like, oh, I would love to do a set of mountains in the fog. This style lends itself well to that design, but if it doesn't look like I'm thinking it should look, it may look more like something else. And what I really, really want to do right now, and I'll give it a try, we'll see how badly I do this, is I like a good rushing waterfall. You know, where you see that stream of just blasting white falling water trickling around, say, a little protrusion, maybe even with some plants on it, in the middle of the stream. And to either side, these rocky croppings of stone. Like, I really like that idea, but it might end up looking a little bit more like a foggy morning on a rock in a yard. So we'll see, we'll see what we actually achieve. Okay, so I'm gonna start with sketching. Oh, putting that first line down is terrifying almost. So I'm gonna do something like this. I think I'm like, and uh, that's a little risky. And then over here, we're gonna do. And then, am I spreading it too far? I might want to go narrower on those last two. I think I want to leave a little room on the right hand side to do the, another wall of stone. Hmm, feel like you could push this a little too far. And then, so this would be the falls that I'm going for roughly. Do I want to do a little more sideways on this one, maybe? Maybe. So this would be like, this is part of the rock face. Falls would run up through here. And then I kind of want to do some rocks right there, maybe a tree, a little bonsai tree. There, and maybe a little shoot here from one of the roots going into the rock, popping off a baby tree. And should probably put, I think we can put a tree up here, like another little tree. Well, that might be a little excessive. We want to be smaller because it's in the background. there, and wouldn't grow in the shade. We don't want one on top of every rock. I might just do a something here. And then do we want a little sprig up here somewhere? Feels like it should have one. Let's just wait on that for a second. So over all that, we should have a sense of foggy mist running through there. Maybe a little bit of foggy mist in the background, a little tinting to the sky. The rock's going to have the shading that implies the three dimensionality of that, and then like the dark lines for the trees, and then like a little bit of shrubbery, like grass and moss or whatever on this guy. Maybe a little shrubbery moss on this. On some of these faces, yeah. Just do a dark side on that one. And I think if we're gonna do it that way, we might also want to do a mossy edge on some of these. Maybe a little shrubby shrub there, and then mossiness there. Let's go with that for starters and see what we can do. I'm gonna start with hard charcoal, and I got these. These are I just bought these today because I couldn't find my old charcoal pencils. These are Artist Loft Jumbo Compressed Charcoal. So they come hard, medium, and soft. And my instinct as a non-professional charcoal artist is to start with the hard because it's less likely to lay a uncompromising line down. I can always darken it with a mushier softness. Then, all right. So with that in mind, this commitment to laying down the line and not fudging with it afterwards—that's the trick. So that's a very tentative line. I need to be a little more aggressive, a little more confident in what I'm doing. Yeah, see, this is not as easy as I remember it being. I'm way out of practice. Okay, so ooh, that's a messy end. That was not a good choice. Okay, so whoop, and gotta do the one in the middle, don't I? That's the one that's important to get right. That's the crucial one. So what we need to do is, and I'm a finger smudger as I am. Ooh, okay. It is blending, but that line got dark. I was going for much lighter than that. I was gonna go back and flush it out, but that might not be what I end up doing. Yeah. So this is starting to remind me of doing it before. So I'm starting to pick up those memories of what I used to do when I did this. I think putting down that pencil line and trying to follow it is going to be a issue. You used to just lay down that line and just go for it. Just do that scribbled line and then smudge. I do think I want to maybe blend that, and I don't like how it lined up so well with that edge on that one. Should have done it a little differently. Ooh, that went way darker than I wanted to. Okay. Let's see if we might be able to salvage some of that. Just pull a little bit of that out of there with a rubber eraser. Come on, lift it a little bit. There you go. Wow, this went down so dark. Well, like I said, you gotta commit when you do it. There's no roughing around with some of this. Yeah, anyway, so the story as to why I came up with this idea and why I was so curious about Sumi-e ink painting to begin with is it's really roundabout. When I really first encountered stuff that made me, stop and think about this style and this technique was when I was real young. My my dad was an antique collector. I guess that's being a little generous. He was an antique enthusiast, and so he had a small collection of it. But I don't think he was ever really like a he wasn't a dealer. He wasn't a traveling the world collecting antiques. It's just a passion he had for old handcrafted, oftentimes things. And so um, I do recall when I was very young that among the things that we had was this blue and white china set. I wouldn't, I'm not sure it was really porcelain. It may have just been like a commercial knockoff of some of the old porcelain stuff, but it was the blue and white style of china that has those. I guess they'd be like Chinese or Japanese blue landscapes with bridges over rivers and little pagodas on them. And I always thought, like, looking at those pieces, that they were so neat because, like, they were just all one color. And in most cases, a simple line suggesting shapes. And yet you had no problem imagining the whole landscape to which they belonged. Okay, so I had a sort of fascination with those pieces, and years later, I found something not quite the same but close enough at a thrift store. It became one of my favorite cups. that I purchased at a thrift store just sitting on a shelf somewhere, neglected by all the other passerbys. And I was sort of like in love with the look of that. The simple approach to implying a thing with some simple lines and some shading. These are all a little too egg shaped for where I was going with this. It's a double line. I want to clean that up a little. A little bit of double line there too. Clean that up. Blend that as a shadow. But like the simplicity of the shapes, still managing to convey a whole awe-inspiring landscape was just a thing I found so enjoyable that years later, when I was traveling to a convention, like a science fiction convention, actually, um, I saw it was the anime crowd had uh, the idea of some of the workshops being a place where they could do some arts and craftsy stuff. And I always like to pick up arts and craftsy stuff, uh, skills, and dabble with it. And I'm usually pretty good at picking up a skill like like that. It's just something that I can sometimes find a thing that fascinates me. I'll sit down and I'll study it and play with it and get a grasp of it and be able to apply it to a project. And so like I saw this class somebody posted of Sumi-e ink painting. And so I went, oh, I'll take this. This is something I'm kind of curious about. I want to try to do some of this stuff. And I went in and I took this class and I was terrible at it. I was so bad. Like I was bad on a level that I'm not used to being when I first pick up a skill. And of course, I absolutely fell in love with it immediately. Here was a skill that I couldn't quite figure out or make work. And so, like, it just made me even more fascinated by it. And so, I've never gotten the knack of the actual Sumi-e ink style painting down, but I did start to wonder, could I do it with graphite and do smudged graphite to make the look right? So I decided to give it a try. I think I still have somewhere on like Deviant Art or something like that, some of my early ones um, from attempts, and they are rough. They are not what I would call amazing pieces. This is not where I was going with this, but we'll give it a go. We'll keep playing with it. And so, like, I dabbled with just doing some rough attempts at first, and then I said, like, well, I'm kind of close, and the best way to improve on this is just to do it over and over and over again. And I said, like, if you ever look at a webcomic artist and you see their early comics, and then later you look at some of their later comics and how they improve over time, I went, I think I'm gonna try to use this art style in a webcomic. So I started making a webcomic that used this sort of technique. And I think I probably want to just shade this mostly in. Wow, this is really tough blending. That would be a little bit easier if I anchored the page better. This one should be darker still because it's in the back. Ooh, it might be a little darker than I wanted. But I started doing the webcomic, and like it's been so long, I haven't really looked back at the webcomic I did with this stuff to see if I actually did get better at it, or if it just felt like I was making micro improvements, and every one I made me a little bit prouder of what I'd done. But at any rate, I actually really I kind of really like trying this style out. Might want to try to clean up here. Pull that edge back. Wait, it's too many egg-shaped pieces. I'm gonna give them a little warble in them, a little change in shape. It's getting a little hazy in there. And I might go ahead and clean this one off here. And give it another bump. Give that one a little raise. I might just give that one a clef. Okay, so yeah. This is a little more forgiving because it's responding pretty well to the eraser. I think I was going to go with and there. Let's play with that. See what we can make that do. Ooh, that got super dark. Super dark. Okay, and so we blend. When did that start moving so much? Okay, so I clear off a little bit of that. Cleft it that much. I guess cleave would be the right word for that, yes. And I should probably check my comments, make sure there's a set up right. No, it's still set to top chat. I am not good at paying attention to that. There we go. So, okay, so where are we at with this? Okay, I need to try to think that this side is doing about where I think I need to be with some of this darkening of the faces of the rocks to get trying not to, sheesh, so dark when it goes down. So this side, I need to work on the darkening of the faces a little bit. So let's play with that a little bit and see what, see, it keeps doing that. Like even that, just a little bit of smudging just goes. Clean that up a little bit. See, that worked a little bit better. I gotta go lightly and not mash it into the page. All right, so I'm gonna go lightly, lightly. And then gradually grow stronger. So like this one, just lightly buff it. Okay. I think I'm getting the hang of this. And then buff that out. Let it blend a little bit. Give it some three-dimensionality. I don't know if I like how that turned out. That got so dark. Yeah, my background when I went into trying to do that Sumi-e ink workshop was predominantly in watercolor. And so I'm used to being able to, like, when you've got a little time, add a little water, let it soak, and then do some lifting with the brush. But you can't really do that with Sumi-e ink. Once it's there, it's there. You blend your color to the right color before it touches the page, and then you just work with it on the page, making the strokes the right strength, the right width, the right sweep of motion across the page. And it's such a delicate, fickle skill. And when you're coming from an environment where you're used to being able to fudge the details after you've put stuff down, it's a learning curve that's just really hard to get to. Okay, so I might go back over and just pull off all these hard lines. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Let's see how this goes. I will have to drop in like the tree here soon. Lightly. Okay, very lightly. So this is really kind of experimental. It's me exploring getting back into maybe playing around with stuff like this again. I'm not sure that charcoal is my best medium. It looks sort of misty around like the edges there, giving it room to be a little misty. I do think if I want to maintain that mistiness, I want to pull some of this out of here. I think I went a little too far on that. Just make the edges less sharp. There you go. Do think this needs a more hardline definition. Okay, so we did that. Maybe a little bit of work and blend that a little so it's not as sharp, but not disappearing into the work either. And I kind of feel like I want to do a little vagary here. Maybe just make it come out like it's going to go over here a little ways. Ooh, that's way too dark right in there. Okay, so I think I got that side fairly well roughed out. Well, a little more than roughed out, almost finished at that point. Because this is a style of art that's heavy on the implication of things and a little more light on the spelling it all out. Obviously. Stop shifting the page, please. Come on. I know you're there. Pull up a little bit of that. There you go. What was I doing there? Making another rock off to the side, or was that just an unfortunate gouge with a piece of charcoal? Neither of us will ever know, because it's now a lead into another rock. Let it be what it wants to be, I guess. Now, it's going to be tricky to go back over some of this and sharpen up that outside line without going too brutalist with it. Clean up that edges. See, this is some of the flexibility that I was able to get out of it that I couldn't do with a regular Sumi-e ink because just it wouldn't let you do this. You can't really clean up edges with Sumi-e ink. You lay it right or you don't. And I'm not good enough to be able to do that right. So this gives me a little bit of that flexibility I need to get the look I want. Ooh, I'm really gumming up that part, aren't I? You can only rub this paper so much before it starts to argue back. Go in a little bit here. Clean up some of that harsh dark edge. Don't rub too much when you're trying to get the eraser boogers away, because then you'll just smear everything. It's the other thing about charcoal that I always struggled with. On a sharp line on the mountain edges and a misty along the bottoms. I'm just gonna clean that off. It's not the way it's supposed to look. That's just not meant to look like that. Okay, that's not bad. It's pretty good. What do you think? Probably be easier to hear your comments if you were here and watching it while I was doing it. Such is life. I do think this needs sharpening here. I think what I'm gonna do is, I mean, some of that's supposed to be moss grass anyway. Oh, I'm kind of afraid to go in and hit it with the hard lines. This would be easier if I could rotate this. Okay, so we've got that. That's not bad. That's pretty good. Oh, careful. I think this needs to be darkened a little bit. Nope, careful. This is just not the angle to do it at. That's a mess, that was. Get in there. Clear that off a little bit. And I feel like that sort of needs to be elongated. But blend it ever so slightly. All right, so that kind of does that. Go back in. Bless you, eraser. You're going to save some of this work. Okay, and got that. And these, if you're a lot more confident with the strokes you're making, a lot less jittery pieces. Now it is okay to get a little jittery with some of this, I think, because the rock faces, they shouldn't be uniform. There shouldn't be like a smooth, uninterrupted arc. Okay, so that's all the rocks, and it feels like there's a little fog in the middle of them all. I do feel like I pulled too much at it into this one and obliterated some of that fogginess. Let's see if I can pull some of it back. Okay, so what I need to do now is do my tree here, shrub here, shrubby here, and then I got to do my big tree, like the focal point tree right there, which, as I'm looking at it now, I'm realizing is very centered, which is usually not what you want to do. You don't want to center your focal point like dead center. Not every piece should have, well, you can do it sometimes. I guess it depends on how it'll look in this one. Usually you want to sort of offset it because doing dead center kind of gives a amateurish feel to some of the work. Okay, and I did want to do, oh, this is going to be tricky. Okay, so we go in. This is going to be fun. Little experiment. Okay, so we do, what are we looking at for trees here? And I feel like that's, and then we're gonna mash points all over it, I guess. Not sure I like that as much as I could. It's hard to get the look just right. All right. Feel like these might be ruining the piece, but we'll give it a go. All right, so really just doing whatever you want, don't you? All right, booger that up. That's not where we were going with it. Feel like that really, really made that suffer for it. Come on, clear up. And get you out of there. That's not what we wanted. All right, clear it up. That's a mess, that is. Um, well, it's not as bad. Still don't like it. I don't know if I'm being unnecessarily critical of my work. Think I like that approach to trees better. So I may just do that. Do an inky blob. Clean up around it. Trying to go too far and get detailed leaves was not gonna work. Okay, that's not too bad, honestly. So here, let's get back in here. Get that guy mushed. And then clean up around it. That's actually doable. That's a little bit better. Now I gotta get the one right there in the middle with the little offshoot on the bottom. I can sign it down there. I have the charcoal fingers, yes. The sign of somebody who's been at work. I do think they got a little dark. And lighten that a little bit. do need to do some blurring, mossing around these stones that I talked about earlier. Or do I? Okay, so let's just play with the little offshoot first. So call that decent. Clean up around the edges to define it a little bit better. That's not bad. And then I do the, oh, it seems a little bigger than I wanted it to be. It's going to be a little twiggy little guy. A little more of a sprig. Sparse, light. There you go. Now that one needs to be the big one. I feel like this could mess it up really easily. But it's also the most important one on the whole canvas. I shouldn't call this a canvas. This is a drawing tablet. I feel like I need to solidify that trunk a little bit. Make it a little less wispy. And then come on. No, where are you coming from, dude? These points unknown. And then we just do the all right. Dang. That seems a little crazy. Okay, so we gotta go in and clean up the trunk. Okay, come on, let's not smear. It's supposed to be helping me clear it up. There you go. Now we blend. Kind of like having that gap in the middle there. See if we can get that clear. That's very dark. That's super dark. It's almost like a silhouette tree in the middle of everything else. And that's not what we were shooting for. Keep cleaning this eraser off because it's getting gummed up. Ah, not perfect. Not perfect by any stretch. But I think it's good enough that I can be happy with it. There's a very soft edge to everything on these guys. Like I want to lighten the trunk portion of it a little bit. Not quite so boldly dark. He's starting to deteriorate the paper though, so I have to be careful. I think I'm going to stop fiddling with it and let it be what it is. So I think get rid of some of that smudge from my hands all around it. Okay, and I wanted to do a little moss. And I want to do a little moss. No, stop. Put that down. All right, I think I'm going to call it there before I make it worse. Do sort of feel like I need to do something in the sky, but that's just an impulse that I might have to curb. Stop shifting, please. think I'm going to call it there. Okay. So, what kind of timeline are we looking at here? Did that take an hour and a half? Oh, it took about an hour and 10 minutes. I didn't think it took that long, but I think that's all right. That's pretty good. Yeah. I don't know if it's backwards for you guys or not. I think it's backwards for you. It says 2019. I don't know how long. Okay, good. It's because I'm looking at my own screen and it's showing it backwards to me. So yeah, that's an art style that I did when I was younger for a web comic. I'd say like the thing I've noticed about doing art like this is like it's really easy for me to be my own worst critic. I'm likely to look at this for the next 2 days and go, that was a real rough attempt at doing this. I can't tell though if I put this away for like 4 months and look at it again, I'd come back and maybe look at it and go, actually, that's not that bad. Because there are times I've looked at some of my old artwork or read some of my old writings and go, oh, wow, that was actually not that bad. But at the time, I wanted to rip them up and throw them away. So let's see if I can pull this off. And not bad for a like first time with charcoal in 15 years and first time in this art style in about 10. And admittedly, it's an art style I've never been good at. So I said that when I started, but I will play with this a little bit more now that I've pulled out my charcoals or got a new set anyway. So this is the hard one. Okay. I'll probably play around with doing a couple other things in charcoal and a different style in the future here. This one was just the one I was most familiar with having done before. I could try a few things like uh, facial features or still life in charcoal, but I've never been really good at still life. I always struggle a little bit with some of the details. And my stuff always comes out looking extra dark. It's like goth still life. I'm not sure what it is. Like I think it's just always going in and trying to get those last little bits of details, and you just incrementally make it darker and darker and darker. I'm gonna work on my light hand. Alrighty, so I think coming up on the edge of the end of this episode. Tomorrow, I believe I'm going to be playing with color pastels, which is essentially color charcoal or chalk. So I'll give that a try tomorrow. And I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. I may just come up with it as I sit down tomorrow. Yeah, composition wise, I'm not sure I'm big on this one. It all kind of runs down this way and this way, crossing right in the middle. It's lazy composition. But I might be being hard on myself. So I appreciate you guys joining me for this experiment. I will look at potentially making these available for like maybe like the DeviantArt page. Um, I was originally thinking it might be fun to do a split down the middle and do two thin ones and make them into bookmarks. I'll see what I can do. All right. See you tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. Take care of yourselves.